All right, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the MARESUNEX seminar of the last one in this series for this semester. Welcome everybody here in the room. I see that we have some special guests today. Thanks for coming. Thank you also and welcome to those who join us remotely. I would like to start. Well, first of all, I'm Peter Munder, together with Dr. Steve Crowley and Dr. Richard Elliott. We are together leading this seminar. I will quickly give you a rundown about what we do this afternoon, and then I will introduce the seminar speaker, and then our seminar speaker will give our seminar for the next 40 minutes. After that, we will have 5 minutes to discuss at our tables a few questions. Those who join us remotely may join the breakout room. The students who are in class and join us remotely have to join the remote breakout room. Everybody else is welcome to do that or welcome to stay in the main room. After 5 minutes, we'll gather together for an Q&A. All right, with that, it's my pleasure, first of all, also to announce that this MARESUNEX seminar is sponsored by the School of the Environment. So thank you, School of the Environment, for helping us. And then it's my great pleasure to introduce David Abraham. He is an expert on critical minerals and the geopolitics of the clean energy transition. He is the author of the award-winning The Elements of Power, the first book to explore how the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy is reshaping global power, supply chains, and economics. Research for the book took him deep into mineral supply lines across China, Brazil, Estonia, and Indonesia. With a background in Wall Street finance and energy trading, Abraham also served in the White House Budget Office, where he oversaw funding and programs for the Office of Surface Mining and U.S. Foreign Assistance Initiatives. Currently, he is an affiliate faculty in the School of the Environment at Boise State University. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from Boston College and a Master's of International Economics from Tufts University. Abraham lives in Bangkok and is the founder of a Live Work hospitality company with properties in Indonesia and Sri Lanka. Please help me welcome David Abraham.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys, is the microphone on? That you guys can hear? Great, great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. I'm a little confused. Critical minerals. What do you guys know? What are critical minerals? When you hear? Yeah.
Material sources essential to national security and defense.
Okay. Resources critical to national security and defense. Any other definitions? Okay, so defense technologies and green technologies. Okay. So defined by end uses where they go. Anything else? And I have name tags, so especially if you're in the front row, I'm going to want to hear.
They tend to be difficult to access, and they're either difficult to access or there's a supply chain weakness in how we're able to access them.
Good, good. So what do you mean by access?
Like if we wanted to purchase antimony or something,
yeah,
from another country, if they were not willing to sell it to us, that's good.
Okay, so one here's about end use, and there is about reliability of supply. Is that fair to say? Good, good. Other thoughts?
Oh, I think they've done a great job.
You think they've done a great job?
Mm-hmm. And then there's got to be some kind of essentiality component, so it's very hard to do without.
It's hard to do without. So replacement. See, I've been in this space for 10 years, and I don't know what critical minerals mean. In that there's always a mineral that's critical to the person who uses it. And what I hear now when I travel in industry, so last week I was in Hong Kong, and there the only people talking about critical minerals were people who were coming from here. Everyone else was talking about mining or material processing. So there's something as well around critical minerals that has to do with letting people know that the materials that we're getting from the ground are important, almost as a rebranding exercise. So you have the sense of supply. Where do these materials come from? What are their end uses? Are they really defined? And the sense that mining is now important. I think there's a lot of things wrapped up in what critical minerals are. When I looked at rare metals, minor metals 10 years ago, what I was looking at were materials that were produced in very small quantities, that were often used in small quantities, in grams or less. They were often mined as byproducts. They were not commodities per se. They were more like chemicals in that they were traded in backroom deals, if you will, rather than on exchanges. So they had certain parameters that made them unique or not responding to supply and demand signals as clear as other markets. So I wouldn't put a copper in that space. But today, people are putting everything together, and anything that has to do with getting materials out of the ground is becoming critical minerals. So what I want to do in this is I want to really talk about kind of what you guys were getting at about supply lines and their end use. And I want to focus on those types of smaller mineral markets. In terms of these minerals, do you guys know what products they go into? So if we were to talk about rare earths, do people have a sense of what that would go into? Or lithium, or what would a rare earth go into?
Microchips.
Microchips, potentially, yeah. Magnets would be the biggest use case. Magnets, yep.
Batteries and munitions.
Critical minerals, definitely. Some rare earths, but critical minerals would definitely go in, like antimony and tungsten and things of that nature, for sure. So what you have is the supply line that we're trying to be able to build out with the critical minerals. The minerals themselves, I would argue, even though I study them and have been in the market and bought them and sold them, are the least important things of the entire supply line. What they are the seeds to our green and our defense systems, our green futures and defense systems. And the challenge to today, why are we talking about critical minerals in 2025, 2026? Why are magnets, why are critical minerals front page news? Sure.
We don't really have domestic supply of one.
Okay, we didn't have a domestic supply in 2020. We didn't have a domestic supply in 2015.
I mean, but more on how that we're more self-sufficient, our product regularly.
Okay. Yeah.
The race for technology that they're in right now?
That the gun went off in 2025.
Maybe not went off, but I would say it's accelerated a lot with data centers and AI. It's a huge focus of at least our domestic economy.
Right. And then we started to realize, hey, where is this stuff coming from? We need to be able to. I'm sure there's definitely some of that. Other thoughts? Because back in 2010, when I was going to China, because I guess that's really what we'd be talking about. It was clear back then that there was a growing interest in keeping materials within China. So if we wind back to in the late 80s, early 90s, China was needing hard currency, and they started to develop their mining industry. They started to mine material and send it out, very basic, just be able to bring in cash. And what you started to see in their 863 program and other defense and production programs within China, that they wanted to use these materials for more. They started seeing that, oh, these rare earths are really critical to magnets. So they started to look at companies that were producing magnets. And they said, well, the magnets are going to be critical for the development of more efficient motors, cleaner air conditioners, and then electric vehicles. And there came to be this strategy to use critical minerals to develop the end industries that we're seeing increasingly coming out of China at a very high level. So EVs. Has anyone been in a BYD in this room? Anyone been in a Chinese car? I live in Bangkok, as the intro went quite deep. And I drive in BYDs all of the time and a whole bunch of other Chinese cars that I can't pronounce and names that I've never seen. The quality that they are coming out with is incredible, especially at the price point. You can find quality EVs at 20,000 that drive as smoothly as a Tesla, but are produced at such a high quality. And it's fascinating to see that whole supply line. Anyway, back to the 2010s, you saw China really trying to leverage their supply line. That means the minerals that were in the country, the materials that they were processing, and to be able to create the end products. In 2015, they came out with a Made in China 2025 strategy that said we are going to develop supply lines in our country so that 40% of the components we use within the country, 40% of the components that go into our products are going to be made within the country. We're going to produce 50% of all EVs. It was a very clear roadmap that they were setting up. At the same time, they made no secret that they were going to use domestic resources for domestic production. So the wine bottle up here. When I started in the industry in 2012, one of the leaders of the industry, Dudley, came up to me and he said, David, I got this great analogy. France does not export its grapes because they want to make wine. China is not going to export its rare earths because it wants to make vehicles. And it's been a clear statement of Chinese policy that it would not be exporting these materials. So their documents were quite clear. They wanted to safeguard China's industrial policy and national security. And as they said in their documents, in their plan in 2020, their 5-year plan, we must focus on building production chains and supply chains that are independently controllable, secure, and reliable. We must tighten international production chains dependence on China. So making China the central focus, forming a powerful countermeasure and deterrent against foreigners. They were very clear that they wanted to use leverage of the development of critical minerals if they were ever going to go into a trade war. And these are public documents. It was very clear that this was the case. So while we start thinking about critical minerals back in 2025, last year, there has been a long strategy and a lot of focus in the industry within China. So the question is why is this important now? If we can get vehicles from China and they make great cars and they make great magnets and they make really good wind turbines and solar panels, why does this matter? Any thoughts? We need these things for a sustainable economy, but can't we just import them? Okay.
We don't want to be at China's control, like they can cut us off and restrict us from that technology.
Anne, can I put you on the spot?
Other reasons? Well, to ship things across the ocean
Mhm.
uses some sort of fuel.
Yeah.
And we've seen the electric cars explode the flights, so maybe that's not the most efficient way to move things.
Yeah.
Could you summarize those remarks, David, for those of us at the back?
Oh, I should have, but I did.
I think the last comment was a little bit quiet for me to hear.
About supply lines and moving things around.
Yeah, the freight. The cargo, if you want to ship Chinese cars to the Pacific Coast, for example, it uses a lot of fuel. So if the idea is to have an environmentally protected way or to not use fuels, it's not very efficient to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think increasing vehicles are collecting a lot of data. There's some fear about Chinese control of data, US data.
Yes. Did everyone hear that one?
What's the problem?
Yes.
Because as budget carrying all of the thing that China's very interested in. And so if we're comparing qualities of like our cars to Chinese cars, there's a gap.
A gap between who?
American cars.
And which one is better?
I would probably have to say Chinese cars because of what I've seen and what you described.
Yeah.
But I also know that if you're not careful, your car can explode.
Yes, hopefully that doesn't happen too often, but the difference, but there's also something more fascinating, Emily, right? If you go down the supply chain, the materials along the way, the batteries, the magnets, the motors are more efficient in China than the ones we have here.
Americans like America and we have strong national ideology and mythology for ourselves here. And I think if you pull 100 Americans off the street and said, would you rather America be the world leader in electric vehicles, or would you rather China be the world leader in electric vehicles? I think that is a very large percentage of Americans would say, I want America to be the leader in electric vehicles. Not for any really good reason, but like
we do like to win. Do we like winning enough to start mining in the country? Do we like winning well enough to start material processing? Do you like winning enough to start getting out and living in Stillwater, Oklahoma, as opposed to Boise? I think there's the enthusiasm, definitely. And I think if you were to say, hey, do you want America to win in X? Yeah, yes, for sure. One thing I'm concerned about when I think about our strategy, which we'll get into in a little bit, about critical minerals, is that we're really focused on creating a supply for an uncertain reason. And the question is why do we need these materials? If we're not interested in wind turbines, the US government just bought back a lease for wind turbines, then we don't need neodymium and dysprosium and praseodymium rare earth materials. If we're not going to make EVs because that's not a priority, well, then same thing. Then we probably don't need to care much about lithium and so forth. What we need to do is what I think is missing in this country is, what are we doing this for? And I would look at that and say, what kind of economy do we want in the future? Do we want one that's vibrant, that is, as you mentioned, using physical products to collect data so that we're creating economies of businesses of the future that are world leading? Or do we want to focus on services and other things? Do we want a defense system that is not reliant on other people's inputs, so that if we got to a war, we would be able to supply our supply lines? What specifically do we use these critical materials for? Otherwise, we're going to be focusing on mining these materials and then having no end use. And I think as we get into the discussion today, that would be my biggest concern of where we are at the moment. Was anyone here last year in this room? Okay, great. None of this will be repetition, but some of it you've heard before. I'm sure China, I'm going to put that number at 85%. China produces 85% of many of the world's minor metals, critical materials, germanium, gallium, antimony, tungsten, neodymium, praseodymium. The reason why they produce so much is that they demand so much, that they're concerned about making sure that they have the supply on hand. In the US and the rest of the world, we don't produce very much because we don't make many magnets, we don't make many batteries. China does. In the US, but we're really excited now. We've finally realized that critical minerals are really important, so we have a whole bunch of agencies that are really excited right now and are learning a lot about the industry and trying to create policy that ensures that we have the materials that we need for our next generation. The current DC approach, as I see it, focuses strictly on making sure that there is production within the US. All right, is anyone familiar with the company MP Materials? Yeah, oh, I see you say more. I see head shaking and some hands. MP Materials is, Kyle? No? Wyatt? MP Materials?
Mountain Pass.
Mountain Pass. What is Mountain Pass? It's a rare earth mine that produces a specific type of rare earths. Yep. And they last year received federal government funding to be able to expand their operations and to be able to create downstream products from the production of their materials. The U.S. government approach right now is to take equity stakes in companies. So the U.S. government is buying portions of companies. This is something that is historically not done before. It's putting in price floors. Again, they're saying we will buy a certain amount of material. We will pay for a certain amount of material that you produce, something that's not common. It's giving out money to fund the production lines of various various products. It's focusing a lot on seed funding and other funding for new types of technologies in academia and also with startups. There are constantly announcements coming out about new opportunities with the Department of Energy and elsewhere. It's using government authorities. So there's an authority that the Department of Defense has, a rule that the Department of Defense has. When in a time of war, one company can take the material from another company to ensure it can make a weapon or a weapon system. So you think that would be really important if you're going to fight a war and you're making bullets, the US is running out of bullets, the bullet company can go to another company and say, hey, we need to take your material and pay you, but we need to make bullets. That same authority is now being used in the mining sector. The government is trying to get more private sector involved in some of the deals that they're doing, and there's a lot of interest in stockpiling material that we'd like to be able to use in the future. So the approach is very focused on supply or demand. Supply. So it's creating new supply. Our current international approach, it's really to find ways to work with others in creating work collaboratively so we can all create our own supply lines, is how I would look at it. We're trying to develop new supplies and partnerships. We're pushing price floors internationally. We're using trade policy. We're putting in tariffs in place for other countries a little bit of a different tact when you're trying to get everyone to cooperate. So in the past year, there has been a lot of good things that have happened in US policy, right? So we talked about MP materials. MP materials was a first big deal in the critical mineral space that the government got involved in. It was an amazingly creative deal. It got private sector money coming in. It used these creative authorities like the bullet things I was talking about before, so that MP would be very powerful. It was trying to make MP a very profitable company by encouraging them to make magnets. So rare earths are used in magnets, as we talked about before. It was encouraging them to use to make magnets, so the company would become bigger. Right? And it created a national champion, a company we could all be proud of that makes rare earths and rare earth magnets. So it was a very good thing. It also is a very bad thing. Let me explain. Mining is what MP Materials is good at. Making magnets is something it has not done. So what we are doing, the US government is doing, is funding a company that has no experience to do something very technical. It would be akin to asking a farmer, someone who grows wheat and makes amazing wheat, to start developing frozen pizzas. It's a really different skill. I'm sure there are many farmers who make great pizzas, but we already have pizza people who are doing that. So why do we need to be able to mix it up? It risks subsidizing a company to produce a lot of a certain type of rare earths, which could flood the market and lower the prices at the risk of not being able to create other important rare earths, because certain material comes out of the ground in a disproportionate way to the amount it's being used. So sometimes you'll get an oversupply because they're the byproduct nature of materials that come from the ground. And it really creates, and this deal creates an unlevel playing field. One company is really supported by the federal government, the other is not. There's a lot of enthusiasm in DC, bringing renewed attention to old projects and new technologies. Who cannot be excited about new technologies? We're finding cheaper ways to process materials. We're going around the world and looking at projects that didn't work at a different time, but now prices are higher, so maybe they'll work. It's a wonderful time for exploration and discovery. But at the same time, we're funding a lot of bad ideas. There are a lot of projects that weren't funded because they just weren't going to work. Or we're focusing on being able to create new technologies, but we haven't mastered ones that are currently being in production. So we don't have a very deep bench of scientists. If we look at people who create magnets, for example, does anyone in this room ever make a magnet? Okay. Oh, great. There's two. This is two more than I ever get. This is awesome. Okay. Is it easy? It depends. It's easy to make a magnet. A good magnet. Okay. It takes years of work. It takes years of work for some magnets. You might be a magnet savant. I've never used that word before, but okay. So is there a deep bench of people in this country who can make magnets? How many people in the universities in the US do you estimate who have similar experiences that you have? 100? Less than 6, even that high? Order of 100. Less? Less? Okay. So my my point is that when we're trying to create a new industry and it's already elsewhere, we need to know the basics first. It's like trying to be able to win in basketball by just sitting there and trying to dunk. Sure, you're going to score some points, but you got to get the basics right. And too often we're really jumping ahead. The enthusiasm in DC is bringing people to DC, and so mining companies aren't mining the market. I mean, mining their properties, they're mining the capital. And people are coming to DC and they're not leaving DC. It's never great when the capital of a country is the center of an industry. It just warps the incentives. And so you have tech in San Francisco, you have oil and gas in Texas, you have critical minerals in DC. I think it's amazing that people are talking about prices and supply security. The first two people were talking about these materials are important for defense and they're important for our green technologies, and that's wonderful to see, and it's exactly what people should be talking about. They're concerned that the markets aren't supplying the materials because the prices may be too high, or we're not able to bring down the price of production. People are starting to see how all these supply lines come together so we can make these phones, so that we can make vehicles or missiles. And it's a fabulous time that there are people now thinking about supply lines. But at the same time, people talking about prices and supply, but they're talking about the prices of companies. They're talking about a recent deal between a company called USA Rare Earths buying a mine in Brazil for several billion. The prices feel inflated for the markets that we're in. A lot of these markets, I mentioned that the products, or I mentioned the markets, the use of these are in the grams. So the markets themselves are very, very small. It could be $100 million, $200 million a year. But yet we're having multi-billion-dollar companies that haven't produced anything. And the concern is that if these prices start to fall, investors will start to leave the space, and then there's no development of an industry. It's amazing. The government is considering non-market action to create transparent markets. The deals, the investments, the creativity it has to bring capital, to bring Wall Street money, price floors. I could never imagine a party, or either party, Republican or Democrat party, focusing on using non-market policies to create an industry, but yet we're seeing that here. At the same time, we're creating industrial policy. This is something we in the US are not good at. China sets strategies. I'm not saying we shouldn't set strategies and targets. They pick winning industries. We're coming in, picking winning companies, trying to make decisions on who gets investment, doing things very quickly. It's not been historically our strength. And how do we keep markets transparent? How do we develop overall supply? It's not something that we've been set up as a government to do. And the US is pushing its agenda throughout the globe. We're working with partners. We're making things happen. We're telling other countries that they should have price floors like we do. We're making arrangements, talking to the Malaysians, to the Thais, building up supply chains. But at the same time, we're pushing our agenda, and countries aren't too happy about that. The Japanese don't quite understand why we're pushing tariffs and then asking them to develop supply chains, and they're uncertain. And that's a big market for the production of materials and components. The Malaysians know it's important for the US to get into the market, but they're trying to balance out why they're now facing tariffs when they didn't previously. Things feel chaotic to them. The war and the results of the war is not helping our foreign policy and will not help critical materials policy. And then we have our own policy challenges. So this is a magnet. It's really hard to get people excited over magnets. So this is this is you guys' day. You got publicly lauded for doing the work that you're doing. You're seeing that's a beautiful magnet covered in nickel. Is that nickel? Oh, beautiful. The challenge that we're running into is we have an administration that is cutting back on the demand portion of what we need. They're not focusing on paying subsidies for products, which is important when we're adapting new ones, and cutting back the use of certain products. As the second is a quote of the president, he is not a fan of magnets. He likes the steel. Like you ever see the Top Gun, the original, and they're lifting up the aircraft to the top floor, to the deck, and there's all this steam because it's a hydraulic system. Now we're switching to magnets, and which are motors which drive up the planes to the deck. He's not a big fan of those. So it's really hard to rally a policy around a product that the leadership doesn't want, but yet it knows it wants the supply. So there's this kind of conflicting policy message. We want to get the rare earths, but we don't really want it being used. So what I wanted to do now is to kind of look at, get in the summary and talk about the 6 real challenges that I see in setting up supply lines. This picture is what? A hand. Yes, it's an AI hand of what year were these created? 2023, 2022. Remember those days when you type in, draw a picture of a human, and then they would have 7 fingers, and you could always tell that they had seven fingers. And now today, we have AI that's indistinguishable from real life. There's this sense, I think, that the technological advancements happen very fast. And that's very true in AI, that's very true in apps or technology that's built on hardware. But that's not true of hardware itself. And I think there's the fundamental challenge we have in our supply lines and is a real appreciation for what has developed in China and how they have methodically created amazing supply lines to be able to create products and to commercialize technologies. And it's going to take us a long time to develop the same type of skills and physical infrastructure within the US to be able to compete with what's out globally. So there's a lack of experience. There are a few hundred, between 200 and 600 people who study magnets. And so there's not a lot of experience here. So you guys will have jobs. And that's important. We, as I mentioned, don't have the demand for a lot of resources here within this country. 85% of the supply and demand happens in Asia. So if you're creating a mine and you're in Thailand or Malaysia, why are you focusing on the US? Because 85% of your market is in China. As I mentioned, there's the misunderstanding of the challenge. There's a lack of equipment. We may not think about it, but if you're going to set up a magnet facility or a mining facility, you need equipment. And most of the equipment comes from any guess? Any guess? Yeah, China. Yes. So the equipment that makes the equipment comes from China, and increasingly China is not allowing out that type of equipment. And we aren't very good at industrial policy. So I really see that there are 5 outcomes, and I will end with this. There are things that we could do to ensure supply within the US. We could buckle down. We say we have a reason for doing this. We want to rally. We want to create a robust next generation economy that can make robots, and it can create sources to create data. We're focusing on AI and need big data centers. And we need to be able to build the infrastructure within this country to do it, and we're going to rally around that. And we're going to take 5 or 10 years and be able to start to really build that system. That would be the great outcome. There's the grand bargain, where we talk to the Chinese and say, hey, we need to make sure that we have your materials. Let's talk about things that we could trade. Maybe we'll bring over your BYD factory. Maybe there's some other types of trade that we could have or things we can give up. So that's a possibility. We repeat the lessons of 2011. People remember what happened in 2011, 2010 in the rare earth industry?
The fishing boat incident.
The fishing boat incident, correct. Anyone know what the fishing boat incident is? Yeah.
All getting into plates. Japan attacked the Japanese.
Yeah, so there was an incident over some islands, some boats happened. There was a fishing boat captain from China who was stuck in Japan. Then China, no rare earths for you. And then Japan said, oh, this is not good. And the prices of the material shot up, and then they came back down. And Japan tried to do a few things to make sure they would never have to rely on Chinese supply again. And so they invested in a mine in Malaysia, and then prices came back down. It's okay. And Japanese companies are saying, we got what we need. And the Japanese government said, well, all right, well, we got one mine, so maybe that's good enough. And so the lesson of 2011 was maybe we just have a national champion or two, and then we'll still be stuck on China. But we've made some progress. So maybe that'll be the outcome. Or we can Afghanistan war the problem. We can go in with no strategy, no outline for victory, and spend enormous sums, and then end the project and say, well, whatever happened, we had some companies, there's some magnets, there are little pieces around, and the whole thing can kind of crumble. Or we have a Galapagos situation. Does anyone know about Galapagos phones? Has anyone heard about Galapagos phones? Has anyone spent time in Japan? In 2010, when I lived in Japan, there was the iPhone, and then there were these random sorry, I don't have a picture on this one. It's a random flip phone that had a video screen, and it was not useful to me in any way. I could not understand how to use it. You still had to type in, on the phone, AA, BBB to make text messages, but it wasn't AA, it was like Kaki, Kuke, whatever the Japanese version was. But it only sold in Japan. It never sold anywhere else. And things develop in certain countries, especially in Japan, and they call it the Galapagos. These were Galapagos phones. Each country developed on its own. So my fear is this. If we're all trying to set up supply lines for ourselves, then the cost of material is going to be different in different regions. China will be cheaper, Japan will be mildly, it will still be more expensive. The cost of production with tariffs will be higher. And what we'll start to see is a division of products based on the countries that they come from. So the US will have a certain type of car. China will have a certain type of car. Europe and so forth, which would set up a horrible precedent and would also make it very unlikely for us and our economy and our companies to compete internationally, because we will have the higher priced products. So I really hope that we can buckle down, identify, and build out a robust market, and have an understanding that this stuff, physical science, takes time. It's not easy. And that we do need people who are creative and trying to figure out how to make the products that we need of the future for magnets, batteries, and chips. So thank you very much.
Well, first of all, thank you for this wonderful talk. But now we go over into our breakout rooms or breakout tables, as we have them here. Please engage with each other. There are the questions up there. What should US policy be to secure critical minerals? What are the main risks to set up a supply chain? How would you judge success in setting up a critical minerals market? Please go ahead, take 4 minutes to talk at your tables, and then we'll get back to a Q&A. All right, there is a lot of noise in the room here. That is wonderful. So I think you're probably ready now to answer or not answer these questions. Maybe you do, but also have questions for our speaker. Who would like to go first? Nick is going first.
Thanks for the great talk. That was really interesting. I'm curious, so in talking about these outcomes for the United States, I feel like one of these national champion products that we have right now is I mean, maybe I'm skewed because Micron's here in Boise, but I feel like we're doing a great job at memory and AI infrastructure specifically. So that's one area that we're leading in. What are some other, but like our entire economy is propped up on this AI bubble that who knows what could happen. What are some other like industries or directions that you see promise in that we could improve domestically?
We have many great industries with the financial industry, incredible of allocation of capital and risk and understanding. Our tech industry and what happens in San Francisco and increasingly around here is unbelievable. Our ability to innovate and start seed projects, especially around technology, is wonderful. What the space, there's a whole bunch. I think that the big concern is just the mismatch of the time it takes and the appreciation. The physical sciences take time and expertise, and that type of thing in a culture where people can have their 15 minutes of fame very fast and very often, and things go viral. Production doesn't go viral, and so it's that mismatch in time that I think we'll have to start thinking in.
Judging you all. Oh, all right, good work, mate.
Okay.
Clearly.
You put a lot of emphasis of how China's electric cars are interesting and also like really nice compared to the cost. And there's right now a mismatch of the US is trying to be more clean with electric cars and Tesla, and a lot of the manufacturers are trying to make at least an electric model, but we're not allowing, I guess, Chinese cars to come into the market because some are scared and whatnot. But do you think that if we allow them to come into the market, it might put a little bit more interest in like magnets and electric motors and efficiencies? So like it might improve university funding and maybe the government might have a little bit more interest? Or do you think it's just not going to be possible, or just it's not going to be possible to see Chinese EVs in the market at all?
I think there's a couple things to unpack. I think the government does have interest in the magnets at this moment and the materials aspect of it. I think you're right that Ford and other companies really highlighted if Chinese cars are here, we're finished. And their ability to create the components and commercialize them so fast. I feel it's like, how do you introduce, the question is, how would you introduce them? How do you introduce something that is such a powerful force and will have such strong market demand and not undermine your current businesses? And that's kind of what I was alluding to, the grand bargain is how do you come together and allow something like that to happen? So it's a delicate a dance for sure. It's a very good question.
Of the 5 outcomes you listed, which do you think is the most likely?
Probably the national champions, where we're left with a few national champions, unless we can sustain interest. I fear a couple things. I fear is that right now, a lot of people are in critical minerals, especially in DC. It seems to be the one area that both parties can focus on, and there seems to be agreement there that we need the resources to create a strong defense system. But my concern is there are two main concerns. One on the business side is that the assets become too overpriced. Wall Street realizes these might be a little overpriced, and then the industry starts to suffer. There's not a lot of investment in it. That's one concern. The other concern politically is that because the projects can be good, but how do you value them appropriately? The other one is the political project. I fear that this can be aligned with a politician. And if it gets aligned with a politician, and then the politician changes and say, all right, well, then we should not be engaged in this type of project anymore. And if that happens, then we're kind of back to where we are. I mean, my belief is that that we're going to have an economy of the future, that we need to start making some of these products here. Because if we don't build the industrial base, then it's like back in the World War II, you could easily switch the US industrial base from a peacetime economy to a war economy because we had foundries, we had things that could make weapons. Now, where would we get the magnets, and where would we get the batteries for drones? You know, so we really have to have some industrial base here.
Dovetailing off that, how did Japan actually do? So from the talk, it sounds like Japan ended up with the national champions kind of end state after the 2010 crisis. So what is I actually don't know. What is their current reliance on Chinese rare earths? And is their sort of state sponsored company doing well? And I guess probably is now after this latest shock, but when the prices went back down, was it just kind of a defunct money burning thing, or what happened there?
The investment in Linus, another rare earth facility, the project state, it lasted. It also was at a level of about 300 million for the investment in debt, where what's happening in the US is multiples of that. But that's a side of the point. The industry is not strong. Their magnet industry, they had 4 players. There seem to be 3 in the permanent magnet space at the moment. They're not producing at capacity. They can't win on price. So the industry itself hasn't evolved to face the competition that it would ideally be at. So it's not as strong. And China is continuing to make products that can compete against Japan.
So I would think that as we try to bring manufacturing domestic, we need help from some of our allies who have become good at the manufacturing in their own countries, like TSMC, Samsung. We're bringing them domestically. But they're our friends now, but that's the problem, is that maybe they won't be our friends in the future. And what's the incentive for them to come here when our goal is to be self-reliant from them, I guess.
Sure. I would hope that allies can last decades and centuries. Maybe that's my hope. Also, it's a question of if it's produced within the country, is that sufficient enough? Or does it have to be produced by, does it have to be an American company that's producing in America by Americans who love America? Or is it okay to be produced by Japanese who are in America producing and selling in America? I would argue that if the production is, as long as the production is secure, it wouldn't matter if it's here, produced by, you know, whomever, or if it's actually produced in Japan and then sent here.
We've got one online question. Go a tick, and then come back to the online. Is there one more over?
No, I was gonna wear it up like you were.
Oh, okay. Sure, you can have a turn. Okay then. I would like to think we could end the semester with the same number of professors we started with.
Hi. So we are trying to secure domestic supply, and that's great. But if we somehow manage to do international supply in the future, then how are we gonna match the price with China? And they will give the same materials for low price, right? And they have low labor cost, low manufacturing cost. So how will we compete in the international market?
Yeah, there's especially low manufacturing costs. There's their efficiencies that they have because of higher capacities, and yeah, so we're racing right now to create a more expensive product.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. But that's okay, because you have to do that. The cars I was driving around in China in 2010 were horrible. I was scared about the safety, but it improved. It improved drastically. So how do you handle that? You handle that with subsidies. There are other incentives that could happen. So yeah, it's unfortunate. That's the issue. That's kind of going back to the Galapagos issue, where there are so many different price points that are faced around the world, for sure. And then as the US develops capacity and starts to get the basics and then starts innovating and finds better ways, more creative, you know, it gets to a point where the product becomes mature. Like at what point, so we're not competing on microwaves the same way. It's, you know, it's a microwave, it works. And so for cars, you don't need a charge that gets the car 2,000 miles. It's like, so when can we get to the point of good enough, if you will? Oh, I like the team.
So for someone who is not going into the mining industry, and doesn't have much of a say or any say in politics, what do you recommend for that archetype of somebody to make any difference when they just feel kind of just like a drop in the bucket? Like, yeah, that'd be great, that would happen, but like, I'm not gonna do anything about it. Like, what am I gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we all have a say. It may not feel like it.
Yeah.
We all need to have a say. There are things that there are a couple of things that you can kind of do. So in terms of use products longer. Whatever you buy better and let it last longer. Therefore, you're not churning through material, regardless of what it is. And then also, it sounds silly, but recycle your products instead of keeping them, because in order to have an industry, you need to have feedstocks, and feedstocks are the electronic equipment that we have. So can we be able to recycle them? So they may feel like insignificant things, but they are important to do. And you kind of set examples for other people. We know one of us, except for these two, are going to create any kind of product that's going to revolutionize. But we can be a part of something, and we can be a part of a movement, and we can be enthusiastic towards something. And sometimes that enthusiastic becomes contagious. I think in this environment where politics is, I don't live here. You guys do. So you guys know more of the day to day, but I read from overseas, and I read every newspaper. It feels like we're just trying to get back to where we were, and but try and be able to do the things that you would like to see. I don't know if it's too deep or.
So, question the problem. Can you pass it back, and then we go this way, and then come over here?
I'm curious if you see any or what change you would see if we put our collective effort into developing nuclear energy and having a robust system of nuclear energy. How would that change this landscape?
If we had a robust system of electricity that's inexpensive, it would reduce production costs for things, for sure. So therefore, electric vehicles would be cheaper to produce, cheaper to run. It's a way to lower the cost of a lot of things, a positive deflationary aspect. And I'm sure there's some synergies in the resources that are created to develop nuclear from the materials that could be used in other applications, but I can't speak to that.
You had talked about where it may not matter where the goods are coming from. I'm curious. So I work in government procurement, and we're restricted through like the Buy America Act and other amendments and laws that restrict where we can get things from. And how are those policies impacting what you're seeing with the government stance on the rare earth materials?
It's a real challenge when the U.S. and China both agree on one aspect in critical mineral policy, is that Chinese critical minerals will not be in U.S. supply lines in 2027. The U.S., that's an ambition, and for China, that's actually an ability. There are reasons for this, and good people have different opinions on how efficiently and how effectively you can do that. But it's very hard to take out a piece from the supply line and not replace it with something. And I think that's what you're going to find out, and you know much better than I do. There's sometimes there's no other replacement for the puzzle piece but the puzzle piece.
Let me make a comment about the gentleman that mentioned maybe you're not in geology or in the mining industry. You don't have to be a mining engineer. You don't have to be a geologist to get involved in this. You can be a chemical engineer. You can be a metallurgical engineer. You can find yourself in marketing, finance. There's just all sorts of areas and professions you can find yourself. Supply chain management. I guess Boise State has a program in that. Take a look at that. And I will add one other thing. I spoke here a couple of years ago. You had a forum on quantum computing, and I learned that the rare earth element holmium is critical. You can't do a quantum chip without holmium. Guess where all the holmium comes from? China. And you've got a mountain of rare earth or a mountain of tails over in Pocatello from Simplot. I have no idea. I know there is research into how do we concentrate rare earths out of that pile. Take a look, you guys, at whether there is the element holmium in there. This is a really important thing. If you can find that there's holmium over there, then go for it. Figure out a way to produce it in quantity. That's all.
Thank you. Can you please quickly introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. My name is George Byers. I unfortunately went to the University of Mississippi a long time ago, but I find myself out here because I love the West. I've been in the mining industry since 1980.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for that. We have still a few minutes for questions. We have online a question.
Virginia, do you want to unmute or do you want me to type?
Okay, I'll unmute if you can hear me. And George, hi, this is Virginia Gellerman, another geologist. And yes, there's probably holmium in the pile at Pocatello, and I could tell you more, but not for this audience. David, that was really interesting talk. Thank you very much. I guess my question, and some of the students have sort of gotten to it, I really appreciated your comments about balancing supply and demand, and also your concern about the government, at least our government, trying to muscle into the free market system. I'm not sure I want the politicians that barely got out of college making important business decisions and technology. So how do we get the policymakers to wake up to the reality instead of trying to dictate economics and technology by their emotions? And I also wanted to point out that trade among nations or tribes has really been driving the world for thousands of years. So, yeah, I mean, that's like, yeah, we're never going to and I could go a lot more about mineral resources, but we're never going to have all of the holmium or the lanthanum or whatever neodymium for the magnets or anything else that we need in one spot. And even the Chinese will run out at a certain point. You know, I mean, you've got to trade. We've got wheat that they want. We may have rice or whatever. So that's the way the world has worked. So how do we get the politicians to kind of get off their high horse and look at the real world?
I think you make a good point on the leverage in trade and the opportunities, and for if you produce rice or soybeans, someone else produces magnets. But I think there are opportunities when one country relies on another and vice versa. In terms of the policy challenges, you've got people who want to see something happen. And so right now you're seeing investments. Investments can happen because of the way the government apparently is structured these days. So that you're seeing things happen because that's the way, not necessarily the policymakers, but the politicians want. So we elect these people to make decisions on our behalf. And now they're making a lot of decisions on our behalf.
That's true.
Get politicians that you want in there, unfortunately, if that's the concern that you have. And I'm looking up as if you're there.
Well, it will be posted. Well, one hope that I have out of this, and I think why we put this entire thing together, this seminar that we meet and the class that we have here, is that I think there's a lot of challenges that we learned again today and saw more of them. But those challenges also are opportunities. And I hope that you all in here see that there is opportunity in various ways. We have heard a few also in response to some of the questions. You don't need to be a mining engineer to be part of that. I think that is a message for me that is important. Well, on that note, we will have a little bit more of the semester to talk about these things. But for now, I think we had a great afternoon. Thank you for everybody for participating in the discussion. Thank you to David Abraham. Please give a big round of applause for our speaker.